He thought his mother was the kindest woman in the world. But when his pregnant wife kept showing up with bruises and tears, the truth hidden inside their own home shattered everything. This is the heartbreaking story of a Tanzanian man who had to choose between blood and love, and how that choice changed his life forever. Welcome to Folktales Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and share with friends and family. There are moments in life when everything looks perfect from the outside, yet behind closed doors something painful is happening. This story begins in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, inside a beautiful home that many people would admire if they passed by. The walls were painted bright white, the garden was well kept with hibiscus flowers blooming by the gate, and a brand new SUV sat shining in the driveway. To neighbors, it looked like a house of happiness. But what was hidden inside would soon break a man's heart. The man's name was Joseph, a successful businessman in his mid-30s. He had worked for years in logistics and transport, building his company from just one old truck to a fleet that now served the whole country. People respected him. They called him Mzee wa Biashara even though he was still young, because of how disciplined and focused he was. And Joseph believed he had it all. He had married Amina, a beautiful young woman from Arusha. She was kind, soft-spoken, and always carried herself with humility. They had been married for 2 years, and now she was expecting their first child. To Joseph, life felt complete. He often told his friends, "When you work hard, when you stay faithful, God blesses you. My home is my greatest blessing." But one day, Joseph came home earlier than usual, and what he saw would change his world. It was a Thursday evening. The sun was just beginning to set, casting an orange glow over the streets of Mikokini. Joseph usually stayed late at the office, but that day he decided to surprise Amina. He wanted to spend the evening with her, maybe eat together and talk about the baby. He even stopped on the way to buy her favorite fresh mangoes. He was smiling as he parked his car, humming to himself. The gate opened, and he walked in carrying the small bag of fruit. Everything looked normal. The garden boy was trimming the hedges, the housekeeper was sweeping near the veranda. But as soon as Joseph stepped inside the house, he felt something strange. The silence was heavy, almost uncomfortable. He placed his keys on the glass table and called out, "Amina." No answer. He walked through the hallway, his shoes clicking softly against the tiles. Then in the nursery, the room they were preparing for their baby, he found her. Amina was sitting on the floor beside the half-built crib. Her hand rested protectively on her belly, and her shoulders shook as she cried quietly. Joseph's heart sank. He rushed forward. "Mama Mtoto, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" She quickly wiped her face and tried to smile. "It's nothing. I just slipped earlier, but I'm fine." Joseph looked closely. There was a faint bruise on her cheek, another on her arm. His chest tightened. "Slipped? Where? This doesn't look like a fall." Amina turned her face away, avoiding his eyes. "Please, Joseph, don't worry about me. I'm okay." But Joseph could not ignore what he saw. His wife, the woman he loved and protected, was sitting there with fresh bruises and tears. He reached out and held her hand, but her fingers were stiff, trembling. Something inside him told him the truth was much darker than she was saying. Later that night, Joseph couldn't sleep. He lay awake, listening to Amina's breathing as she finally drifted off beside him. Questions kept running through his mind. Who could have done this? Could it be strangers? Could it be someone from the staff? But why would she hide the truth? The next morning, the house moved as if nothing had happened. The kettle boiled, the maid prepared breakfast, birds chirped outside the kitchen window. Amina moved around slowly, one hand steadying her belly, the other buttering toast she didn't eat. Joseph noticed how she flinched when the butter knife grazed her wrist. He also noticed how she avoided his eyes, giving short answers whenever he spoke. Outside, he overheard the gardeners whispering to each other. "Madam doesn't laugh like before. She looks so sad. I think something is wrong." Those words stung him. How could the staff notice what was happening in his own house, Yet he, the husband, was blind. That afternoon, Joseph sat in his office at home, staring at the security camera monitor. Months earlier, he had installed cameras around the house for safety. He had almost forgotten about them. But now he felt drawn to check. His hands trembled slightly as he typed in the code and pressed play. At first, the recording showed nothing unusual. Housekeepers moving about, deliveries at the gate, Amina resting in the living room. But then Joseph's breath caught. On the screen he saw his mother, Mama Rahima, entering the house. She walked with her usual pride, her head held high, pearls shining against her neck. To everyone outside, she was a respected matriarch, a woman of status. But as Joseph watched the footage, his heart began to ache. At first, the conversation between Mama Rahima and Amina seemed calm. But then Joseph saw his mother lean closer, her face hard, her finger pointing sharply. Amina's shoulders curled inwards, her hand protectively covering her belly. Then Mama Rahima shoved her back against the kitchen counter. Amina winced, clutching the edge for balance. Joseph froze, unable to believe his eyes. He rewound the footage, watching it again slowly. There was no mistake. His mother, the woman who raised him, was the one hurting his wife. His stomach churned as he watched more clips. Mama Rahima blocking Amina's way, pointing at the unfinished crib as if it was an offense, slapping her cheek without hesitation. Amina didn't fight back. She simply swallowed the pain, blinking fast, trying not to cry. Joseph sat back in his chair, his hands gripping the armrests. His teeth clenched so tightly his jaw hurt. He wanted to run into the other room and confront his mother immediately. But he knew her well. She would deny everything, cry crocodile tears, accuse Amina of lying, and turn the whole family against him. He needed proof. Proof that no one could argue against. Proof that would show the truth as it was, without drama, without lies. That night, Joseph lay beside Amina again, his mind racing. He listened to her soft breaths, sometimes interrupted by tiny sobs in her sleep. He reached out, brushing her hair gently, and whispered, "You won't suffer anymore. I promise you." And in his heart, a plan began to form. He would create the moment where the truth would reveal itself. He would not shout, he would not accuse. He would prepare, quietly, carefully, until there was no escape from what was real. The morning sun rose gently over Dar es Salaam, casting golden light on the streets. People hurried to work, school buses honked, and the city was alive with its usual rhythm. But inside Joseph's heart, there was no peace. He had discovered the truth about his mother, Mama Rahima, and the images from the security cameras haunted him. All night, he had replayed the scenes in his mind, the finger-pointing, the slap, the way Amina winced as if she had become invisible in her own home. He could not rest until he found a way to end it. He knew that if he rushed into a confrontation, his mother would deny everything and twist the story. She was powerful in the family, respected by neighbors, feared by the staff. She knew how to manipulate words. But Joseph had one advantage: his cameras. They had captured her cruelty in cold, undeniable detail. Still, he needed more. He needed to make sure that when the truth came out, there would be no escape, no space for excuses, no chance for her to turn the blame on Amina. That morning, as he sat across the breakfast table, he studied Amina. Her eyes were downcast, and she barely touched the cup of tea in front of her. She smiled weakly when he asked if she was okay, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine," she whispered. He wanted to tell her he knew, that he had seen the truth with his own eyes. But instead, he placed his hand gently over hers and said softly, "One day, Momum Toto, this pain will end. Trust me." She looked at him, confusion flickering in her eyes, but she nodded. That day, Joseph pretended to go to work. He kissed Amina on the forehead, picked up his keys, and left the house with deliberate noise so the staff would notice. But instead of driving far, he parked his car just around the corner, beneath a large mango tree whose branches gave good shade. He sat inside with his tablet, connected to the live security feeds. From there, he could see everything happening at home without being present. His heart pounded with both anger and fear. Anger at the cruelty his wife was facing. Fear of what might happen if he wasn't there. Hours passed. He watched the gardener trim hedges, the maid mop the veranda, Amina moving slowly in the kitchen. All normal. Too normal. His mind started to wonder if maybe his mother wouldn't come today. Maybe she would wait until another time. But then, just before noon, a silver Toyota pulled up the driveway. Joseph's stomach dropped. It was his mother's car. She stepped out, perfectly dressed as always, wearing her pearl earrings and carrying her handbag. Her walk was confident, like a queen entering her palace. She didn't knock. She used her spare key and let herself in. Joseph's fingers tightened around the tablet. He watched as she moved across the living room, her heels clicking against the tiles. In the kitchen, Amina was preparing tea, her movements tense, as if she already sensed the storm coming. Through the cameras, Joseph saw it unfold. Mama Rahima entered the kitchen, her face stern, her lips moving fast with sharp words. Amina kept her eyes lowered, nodding slightly, trying not to provoke her. But Mama Rahima stepped closer. She pointed toward Amina's belly, then toward the crib in the nursery. Her face twisted with disgust. Joseph could read her lips even without audio. "You don't belong in this family." He felt rage boiling in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He needed this to play out to be fully captured. Then it happened. Mama Rahima shoved Amina hard against the counter. The teacup in her hand slipped and shattered into pieces on the floor. Amina bent down quickly to pick them up, but her mother-in-law grabbed her arm and yanked her back up. Joseph's jaw tightened. He wanted to run in immediately, but he held himself back. Evidence. Let the truth show itself completely. And then, the moment that made his blood run cold, Mama Rahima reached for the knife block on the counter. Her fingers wrapped around the handle of a sharp kitchen knife. She lifted it slowly, her lips moving with poisonous words. Joseph's breath caught. That was enough. He could no longer sit still. He flung open his car door, ran up the driveway, and stormed through the side entrance. His footsteps echoed like thunder as he shouted, "Stop!" The sound froze both women in their tracks. Amina gasped, tears spilling from her eyes as she stumbled back, holding her belly. Mama Rahima turned, her face pale with shock, the knife hovering midair. For the first time, Joseph saw fear flicker in her eyes. Not fear of guilt, but fear of being caught. Joseph's voice was low, steady, and full of fire. "Enough, Mama." The knife clattered onto the counter as her hand trembled. "Joseph, listen, it's not what you think." But he cut her off. "No, I've seen everything. Every slap, every shove, every word you threw at Amina. The cameras have recorded it all." He pointed toward the ceiling where the tiny red light of the security camera blinked. "This house has been watching you, Mama. And now the truth cannot be hidden." For the first time, Mama Rahima's mask cracked. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted around the room, searching for a way out. But there was none. Joseph stepped to Amina and wrapped his arm around her trembling frame. He held her close, his heart breaking as he felt her shaking against him. The house was silent, except for the sound of Amina's sobs and Joseph's steady breathing. And then, faint at first, came the sound of sirens in the distance, growing louder, approaching fast. Joseph had already called the police when he left the car. He knew he needed witnesses, people who could see the truth with their own eyes. As the sirens grew closer, Mama Rahima's proud shoulders began to sag. She looked smaller, weaker, her pearls hanging crooked around her neck. For the first time in Joseph's life, she didn't look like the strong matriarch everyone feared. She looked exposed. The knock at the door was firm, followed by voices calling, "Police! Open up!" Joseph tightened his grip around Amina and whispered, "It's over now. You're safe." The police entered, their presence filling the house with authority. Joseph handed them his tablet, showing the live footage and the recorded clips. The officers watched in silence, their expressions hardening. When the video ended, they turned to Mama Rahima. There were no questions, no doubts. They stepped forward and placed her under arrest. The sound of handcuffs snapping shut echoed through the marble halls like a final judgment. Neighbors had gathered outside the gate, whispering as the officers led Mama Rahima away. "So it's true," one woman murmured. "Those bruises weren't accidents," another whispered. Joseph didn't care about their gossip. His focus was on Amina, who clung to him tightly, her tears soaking into his shirt. He stroked her hair gently and whispered again, "You're safe now, my love. No one will hurt you again." But deep inside, Joseph knew the real storm had just begun. His own mother, the woman who raised him, the woman he had trusted, had tried to destroy the very family he was building. And even though she was now in police custody, the wound she left behind would take time to heal. Still, as he looked at Amina, he made a silent vow. He would fight for her. He would protect her. He would choose love over legacy, no matter the cost. And that choice was about to change everything. The day Mama Rahima was taken away in handcuffs, the Whitman home in Dar es Salaam no longer felt the same. Though the house stood tall and beautiful, though the garden flowers still swayed gently in the wind, the air was heavy with silence. A silence filled with broken trust, with betrayal, with the painful echo of what had just happened. Joseph sat in the living room that evening with Amina curled up beside him. Her head rested on his chest, and though she was safe now, her body still trembled. She had been living in fear for so long that her spirit needed time to remember what peace felt like. Her tears dampened his shirt, but she nodded softly. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the nightmare had ended. The following days were difficult. Newspapers picked up the story quickly, because Mama Rahima was a well-known woman in business circles. Headlines ran, "Respected matriarch arrested for domestic violence, and wealth cannot hide cruelty." Neighbors whispered. Relatives called, some shocked, others angry. Some of Joseph's uncles accused him of disgracing the family name. "How could you hand over your own mother to the police?" they demanded over the phone. But Joseph answered firmly every time, "My loyalty is to the truth and to my wife and child. A family name means nothing if inside the home there is abuse." It wasn't easy. The weight of choosing love over blood felt heavy. But Joseph stood strong. He knew that if he had stayed silent, if he had protected his mother's reputation over Amina's safety, then he would have betrayed not only his wife but also himself. In the weeks that followed, Amina began to heal slowly. The bruises on her skin faded, but the scars in her heart needed gentler care. Joseph made sure she felt loved every day. He cooked for her, something he had rarely done before. He accompanied her to prenatal checkups, holding her hand in waiting rooms. He sat with her in the evenings, listening to her stories, her fears, her dreams. One night, as they sat on the balcony watching the moonlight shimmer over the city, Amina finally spoke about the pain she had carried. "Joseph," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I thought maybe I was the problem. That maybe I didn't belong in this family. That maybe I wasn't good enough." Joseph's chest tightened. He turned her face gently to look at him, his eyes burning with both love and sorrow. "You are my wife. You are the mother of my child. You are the best part of my life, Amina. Don't you ever believe those lies. You belong with me always. You are my family." Her tears fell freely, but this time they were not tears of despair. They were tears of release, of a heart finally believing in love again. Meanwhile, Mama Rahima faced the consequences of her actions. Court hearings were scheduled. Her once polished reputation was now stained with shame. Some relatives tried to defend her, but the evidence Joseph provided was undeniable. The video footage showed everything: the slaps, the shoves, the cruel words. In one hearing, as Joseph sat quietly in the back with Amina, the judge asked Mama Rahima if she had anything to say. For the first time she seemed small, her voice shaking as she tried to justify herself. I only wanted the best for my son. I didn't think she was worthy. I was protecting him. But the judge's response was firm. There is no protection in cruelty. There is no love in violence. What you did was abuse, and the law will not excuse it. The gavel struck. The sound echoed through the courtroom like the closing of a heavy door. Joseph felt a deep ache in his chest as he watched his mother being led away. Part of him grieved. The little boy who once ran to her for comfort still lived inside him. But he also felt relief. He had chosen the harder path, but it was the right one. Months passed. The house, once filled with fear and whispered pain, slowly transformed. The nursery walls were repainted a warm yellow. Amina began to smile again, her laughter returning like sunlight after a long storm. And soon the day arrived when their baby was born. It was a little girl, with eyes as bright as the Tanzanian morning sky. They named her Nima, meaning grace, because they believed her life was a gift of grace after so much hardship. When Joseph held his daughter in his arms for the first time, his heart swelled. He whispered softly, "You will grow up in a home full of love. I will make sure of that." Amina, lying tired but glowing on the hospital bed, reached out to touch his hand. "We're free now," she whispered. "We're finally free." Neighbors noticed the change too. The garden was full of laughter again. Staff who once whispered now smiled openly, happy to see Madame Amina walking with peace in her steps. One afternoon, as Joseph sat outside under the shade of the mango tree with baby Nima in his arms, one of the older neighbors walked by and stopped. "Young man," the neighbor said, shaking his head in admiration, "you did something very brave. To stand against your own mother for the sake of your wife and child. That takes courage." Joseph smiled gently. Sometimes the hardest battles are not in the boardroom or the streets. They are inside our own homes. And if we do not fight for love and peace there, then all the wealth in the world means nothing. The neighbor nodded thoughtfully, then walked away, leaving Joseph with those words lingering in the air. Life moved forward. Amina healed, Nima grew, and Joseph's heart finally found peace. The shadows that once haunted the house had lifted, replaced by the soft light of a family rebuilt with love. He knew that scars would always remain. The betrayal of his mother would never completely disappear. But he also knew that sometimes, scars are reminders of battles won. They remind us that we survived, that we chose what mattered most. And for Joseph, what mattered most was clear. His wife, his child, his home. As the story comes to an end, let us reflect. In Tanzania, people often say, "Familia ni msingi wa maisha." Family is the foundation of life. But what happens when the very people meant to protect us become the ones who hurt us? Joseph's story teaches us something powerful, that true family is not just about blood, but about love, respect, and safety. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is to stand against even their own blood if it means protecting the ones they love. Because wealth, reputation, and legacy mean nothing if inside your own home there is fear. Joseph chose love over legacy. And in that choice, he saved his wife, his child, and his own soul.